All right, everyone, I'll go ahead and get started. Headset is mildly annoying. We still got a couple tricklers in, but I'm going to go ahead and say hi. Can you guys hear me clearly? Is that better? Yeah? It's not. Is it? Sounds fine in my head. It's green. What, am I going to yell in it? What? That was fine? Okay, good. All right. Just a little technical problem. All right, everybody, I thank you for coming out. I know that I'm in line with the keynote for the day, so I do appreciate everybody that's come. For a little tiny bit of background for everybody who may not necessarily know me or where I come from, a little under 5 years ago, I was a top-level Windows system admin. I was the top of the tier when it comes to engineering and left my Windows job as VP of Technical Operations at a medical billing company. What I ended up doing was transiting what knowledge I knew into learning about Linux and deep diving and really getting to understand it. And now I am a core developer with Arch Linux ARM, and for my day job, I'm actually employed as a distribution manager and senior software engineer with Devon IT. So I have a little bit of experience with the topics I'm going to cover today. So the question would be, what is Angry Noob Syndrome? So Angry Noob Syndrome is something that I've seen, or what I'm decided to call it, as a topic of conversation that I had with a fellow friend. And what we have is, we have people that come into our communities. They may not be familiar, they may not be very well informed, but they're angry because they're not being treated with respect, or they're being completely ignored. Okay, this is not something that we can actually do as a community, as a project, whether it's in FOSS, in Linux, BSD, or anything that you're trying to do, right? Because when they come in and they're angry, whether they're yelling at you or you're mistreating them, the only thing you end up doing is actually harming the community that you're attempting to be beneficial to. So we have many things that this can actually mean. It can be your community actually has ANS, or a person in your community has ANS, all right? This can mean many things, but in the end, we all know this is a very bad thing. So let's talk about a couple of things that are there and how we can actually address them moving forward. A couple of symptoms, right? Frequent regurgitation of FUD. Who has ever been in one of those chat rooms or one of those mailing lists or had that conversation, right? Everybody's had it. Somebody says something, you know it was a little bit of snark, but then some guy who doesn't know takes it as a fact and then gets fanatic about it and just starts spewing it at people, right? This is not a healthy behavior. When you come into a community and you're asking a question, you're genuinely interested, or you're just inquiring about something to see if you actually have a deep interest on it, and you yell at them, or someone does, because they're not making the same decision, or they're not knowing as much about the project, or Linux in general, or free and open source software and how it might work, this is not healthy behavior. You're creating an angry noob because you're going to incite anger in him, because the first thing he gets on is a simple question that may be uninformed, and you're insulting him for no reason. Then we have, of course, the intensive and elitist behavior. We've all seen this in all of our distributions. We know Arch has its issues with its public visibility. So does Gentoo, so does Slack, so does anybody, okay? But that behavior, that's bad for everyone who is in your community. You need to be aware of it and try to not do it yourself unless you're in a community and a tight-knit members that you know already know that what you're saying is snark, okay? Because if somebody comes in and they're walking off the street, you hear something in passing in any restaurant and going, what the? That is exactly what somebody walking into your community is going to get, what they're going to say and what they're going to think. And if they know nothing about it, snap judgments happen. All right, and then we have the entitled and petulant nagging. This is kind of a societal problem outside of FOSS. But if you're not supporting my project and you come in and you yell at me because I'm not doing whatever thing and your accelerated graphics on your brand new NVIDIA isn't working perfectly because it's got some glitch. Seriously, you're not making me want to help you, but I know it's my job to actually attempt to help you. So coming at me angrily isn't doing anybody good. So let's get right into that. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Let's try and not incite these things. Let's be accurate in the things we say, because we really need to know what we're going to have an argument or a discussion actually about. And I'm saying really understand your talking points. If you're going to get into why Gen 2 is better than Ubuntu, then you need to know everything about why Gen 2 is actually better than Ubuntu for that person's use case or your own use case. If you've never used it and you're just some guy, what are you doing? You're literally taking what you've read and spewing it. That is FUD. It's not helping anybody. What about the amount that we actually hear, we see, we read? There's some guys posted randomly all over the internet. Anybody seen Down with System D? And in that case, I really do say vomited onto the internet. So let's cover a couple of these. Gen 2 as a case, right? Outside of Gen 2 and people who don't run systems that are highly tweaked, and I'm not saying it's a ricer distro here, it's very customizable, so it's extremely usable and extremely targetable. There are more embedded systems and applications running on Gen 2 than any other distribution in the world. So before you say it's a ricer distro, get your facts. And I'm not a Gen 2 user. Pulse Audio, right? How many people say they've had problems with Pulse Audio? It's really annoying. I really hate it. I'll never use it again. Do me a favor. Try it again. It's a FOSS project. Things have been fixed. Something's broke, and they fixed it again. It happens. One bad experience does not mean that it's completely screwed for the rest of its life. System D, and I'm sorry that S I really was lowercase. Hey, look, it's Leonard again. Often the same people who are mad at Pulse Audio because they had really bad problems when it was young. System D is really not big of an issue if you understand what it is, how it works, why it does it, and you're not just reading FUD, okay? Details are horribly important to make sure that this crap doesn't get spewed and regurgitated and continue the cycle. Wine, we can all make that argument. Why am I running Windows applications and all my free and open source software? And there's use cases. That's why the software exists. There's pluses, there's minuses. Some of them are actually portable without Wine. Some of them you actually have to have extra stacks from like code weavers and things like that to get it to work well. But, oh yeah, no, there's just some of it that's using some hidden API, yeah, right? At least someone tried to court the devil, you know, right? And then we have all the stuff that has surrounded certain communities or outrages because people didn't pay attention to the details. Elementary OS. Some of you know what happened with that. Some of you don't know what happened with that. Some people thought, hey, they're charging everybody. No, the link was just tiny and below it because they were trying to get some funding because people didn't look long enough to see the details. That crap happened, and it became a shitstorm across all of the internet and the communities, and people were outraged for no reason at all, okay? That took 2-3 weeks to settle down, and it should not have ever taken more than a couple of hours, people. Don't regurgitate things you haven't personally examined. Check your facts. Once we're past FUD, we have to worry about fanaticism, and I bring it up second because FUD can induce fanaticism. That can be about hardware, all right? That can be about Intel versus AMD, NVIDIA versus ATI, Samsung versus anything. The point is, you can go left and right with this one, but again, if you haven't used it and all you're regurgitating is media, and you don't actually have any basis for either of these things, then what ground do you have without having either had personal experience or actually done something with it besides reading what the media says? Has anybody noticed marketing material lies? Anybody? Yeah. SysMD versus SysV versus Plan 9 versus OpenRC. Does it really matter? If you're using it for your needs, it meets your needs in the way it needs to meet your needs. Use the one that works for you. That's one of the beauties of working in the environment that we work in. There are options. There will continue to be options. You don't need to raise a stink about it. Make your choice. Work with it, please. Network manager versus con man. This is not so much of an issue these days, but still people have this argument, and I've had to deal with this, with people not understanding why network manager works this way, but this one works this way, and people arguing why you should have one or the other. Don't ask me, it's an arch thing. But then we have the distros, right? You should be using Ubuntu, or you should be using Debian, or Slackware, or whatever. This doesn't happen as much in the circles that we are in, but have you ever asked somebody who's interested in possibly trying Linux, but they haven't yet because they can't get a straight answer from anybody? Because one guy will answer one way, and the guy beside him will answer another way, and the guy beside him says, no, you're both thinking wrong. That's not helping. You need to know what the person's capable of. You need to know what they're capable of doing and what they know. Because you can't just take somebody who's used Windows 8 for the last 5 versions and go, here's Slackware, right? In that case, Ubuntu, Mint, Elementary may actually be their best option. But if they're a technical person who knows the innards of how Windows behaves, they may actually be able to go, yes, I want a deep dive, and actually go to that. You have to make educated decisions across all of these discussions that we're having. I'm just going to skip that. So this fighting children, right? Let's really not have this problem. We have, do we want to compile everything ourselves? Do we want to package it? If we're going to package it, are we doing it the right way? Are we dealing with dependencies right? You're not doing it. You're too simple. You're too complex, right? There's a reason we have 8 package managers, and we have 2 more coming, right? And then there was, do you patch? Do you patch at all? How much do you patch? Who's doing the patching? Why do you patch so many things? These are all discussions that happen, but they're between distros. And inadvertently, this infighting becomes FUD. This FUD becomes fanaticism, and we feed the cycle all over again. These are things we really have to watch out for. And we all do it. I know I do. I try to catch myself, and when I do say these things, I make sure I'm with people who understand that what I'm saying has some background, and that they know why what I'm saying is probably as a joke. This is not what we want to look like. Anybody agree with that one? Right? For Mac and Windows users, this is what we look like. When we have an argument, that. Okay? So, yeah, it's a good square shot to the face. Might have some head trauma. So the next thing after all of this, and what keeps everything in check, is definitively communication, all right? We've all seen things that blow up. We've all been at the other end of somebody who blew up. The question is, when that person blew up, were they accurate in going after you? Did they have a reason and a right in the circle and respect to actually do that to you? When Linus goes after somebody, all right, these are guys that are put in place. They're trusted. They're expected. This isn't some guy on his first patch going, you're absolute crap, what the hell are you doing? This is some guy who's trusted to maintain a stable branch of the entire kernel or an entire subsystem, and he's been doing it for a couple of years. It's their job to get it right. Everyone expects them to get it right. He called them out. If you don't have that, if you don't have that circle and you just go after somebody for making a bad decision, or doing something stupid, or just not agreeing with you, yeah, let's try not being the dick. Because while you're making that argument with that person, that's all they're thinking. Because they came to you because you know, and you just chewed them out without any valid reason. So the thing you have to keep in mind is very succinct. How you treat your community is an evolution of the people that are actually in the group. Okay? The people you know, the people you work with, you know what kind of communication they're going to accept. Whether they're going to take something that's abrupt, whether it's something that's straightforward, or if you have to be a little more politically correct. Okay? among my group of people, yeah, we've occasionally had the Linus explosion. It happens, but we're a very tight-knit group, and we've been working together for 7 years, right? I would not do that to somebody who's just come onto my project, because the very first thing they're going to do is like, okay. That's not what I want. I want to grow my project. I want to extend my community. I want to show people what we as a whole are capable of. When someone does this to you, don't take offense immediately. Everybody's culture, everybody's mannerisms, everybody's behaviors, even in our societies of the world, are just a little bit different. You need to see what they're trying to say to you. Take that, evaluate what they've said, then respond or directly apply. The response of, you're an idiot, might be because I know you're better than this, what are you doing? But if you do this to somebody new, they don't know that. But keep in mind, at the same time, this can actually be a sign to you that you have reached that point in respect. So if it happens, think before you flip out in response, okay? The one thing you don't want to do is ever ignore anyone. I have people that I unfortunately did lose from my project because they asked me questions over and over and over again. I really should have answered a couple more of those questions. I had to take that, I had to learn. What I've ended up doing is he came to me out of respect to ask me questions, to get my feelings on a problem or what I thought was the correct way to do it within our bounds and our procedures. And I didn't answer him because I thought he should know, or he should know where to go and get that information. Turns out he left and he's now running a different distribution on his own. So he was perfectly capable of joining my inner circle, but because I chose to behave in a way that angered him, I ended up losing that possibility. Yep. Right. Now, note that I said the surest way to be ignored is to ignore. That what you don't want to do is ignore somebody on a consistent basis. There are times when we all know that something has happened and we need to take a step back. Sometimes people just aggravate us. Sometimes we just had a really bad day and somebody can, so we need to be careful. I'm saying don't go, okay, well, this guy, I don't want to deal with any of the noobs today. I'm not going to answer this guy's question at all, right? At some point, they may ask you a really stupid question in your eyes. But then you have to remember that it's, at some point, you didn't know that much either. Less than 5 years ago, I barely knew anything about Linux. And I definitely got my fair share of what the hell are you asking this for? You should know better, right? It happened. So there are times when you do need to step down the communication. But I'm saying don't be dead silent. Does that make sense? So I'm going a little faster than I thought, but education, right? How can we deal with this within our communities? How can we deal with this negativity that we've actually brewed within it and as a result of everything that we've had to deal with in our time? And unfortunately, because we had done to us, we've then inadvertently done it to somebody else. The key component to the FOSS community and the Linux workspaces and things like that is definitively the fact that we want to share our knowledge. We want to take what we've done, be able to give it to other people and know that they can make use of it. Take our knowledge and share it with other people so they can then make use of that for the benefit of others as well, right? I do have some proprietary projects. That's obviously a slightly different story, but for what I do with Linux and I do with my open source projects, this is extremely what I'm going for. The act of learning and growing as individuals in the community, if that were to stop, when mentoring stops, when the acceptance of guidance stops because we think somebody's acting too high and mighty, but they're just failing to communicate clearly, they're no longer there. We feed directly back into the cycle. You create another angry person, or you become that person who is angry at the noob, right? This is a cycle. You want to know why we're not in the year of the desktop, why we're not doing whatever it is? Because we have these problems. We have to, as a community, take an effort and a step to go beyond this. We need to be welcoming. We need to understand that there are going to be people that are coming in they're not going to know anything about Linux, or they're not going to know anything about IP tables, or the way a penetration testing distro works. Any number of examples I can bring out, right? You may have somebody who's interested, they have a minor interest, that you may actually be able to feed them a small amount of information, and they will become highly interested, and they'll become actually a contributing developer. These things, that's called being a mentor. It's highly critical. There's an entire time in all of our societies where you did not become a tradesman without somebody directly mentoring you and teaching you what you needed to know. College doesn't fix all of that. You need real world experience. And the way we do that is by actually going out and talking and answering the questions that people have and not glossing over them because you don't think it's worth your time. Evangelism is a critical piece. We need to tell people what we're doing, why we're doing it, why we think it's important. But we can't be fanatic about it, because the moment we go into that fanatical behavior, we go back into producing FUD, we go back into producing angry noobs. So we have a problem as a people and as a community and as individuals. We have to deal with that. Greg Crow Hartman made a very small comment when asked, well, what happens when you go into these places and they don't know anything? And he said, essentially, and this piece of the quote is accurate, it is always kindergarten somewhere, because it will go in, some people will know something, some people will know a lot, and some people will know diddly. They know how to use Excel, and now they have to go manage a Linux or a FOSS project. Could you imagine dealing with someone like that? Take a second and think about it on your own. What kind of steps you would have to do with that? Would your immediate response be just forget it? Or would it be, okay, I'm going to have to take a slightly different approach with this person and guide them a little more? Moving forward, we can pretty much all agree, I believe, I got a few nods to say the least, that this is definitively a bad thing, and that we need to look back, in my opinion, and look at all of our individual and as our group and our communities at what we've actually done, how we've reacted to these people coming in, these people asking these questions, these people wanting to learn, or maybe wanted to learn, but we'll see how the community is first. Then can we commit to actually being welcoming to these people? Can we take our pride out of the way, our elitism out of the way, and actually take the step that's required to bring and grow these communities? Most important, when those people come to you with a simple question, even if it's a simple question you know that's in the documentation, or it's on the wiki, or you can just do man, or you can just pull it up and do help on the command line. Sometimes they don't know that yet. So just saying RTFM is not a correct answer. You need to actually find out, did you run the help? Don't say you need to run help, RTFM. You need to say, did you run help? Have you checked for the manual entry? Be welcoming. If you chase them off on their first question, you never know what you're going to miss. Can we pretty much agree that these are things that we as a whole have to do? Now, I know that some people are thinking, well, I've never done that. And while nobody in this room may be thinking that, I know that there's people watching, and some of those people are like, that's never been me. I'm not that angry noob, or I'm not the one inducing the angry noob. Yeah, you kind of did. At some point, in some way, if you take the time and you think about it, you have done this. Whether you've done it mentally or you've done it verbally, you've done it to somebody. There will always be those users, the ones that annoy you, the ones that ask the questions that are just problematic. But it's up to us to educate and convert those people into valuable members of our communities, of our projects. Okay? Sometimes the person can't write a lick of code. That's fine. They're a user. Maybe they love the project, they love what it does, but instead they can actually contribute greatly by improving your wiki. That's the first step for somebody who doesn't write any code to actually get involved in the FOSS community, be in the discussions, be an advocate. In the process of doing this, you're adding value to yourself and to the community, because that person will come to respect you. They will come for you to get advice and acknowledgement on things that they can't manage to find on their own. Those are key things that allow us to actually grow going forward. We already live in a society that's heavily consumerized and live in a black box. Do you really want everyone you know to be somebody who just works in a black box? This is what it does. I don't care what it can do. I don't care how it works. Do you really want everybody to be like that? We have entire things, right? Raspberry Pi, the entire education stem from that. The entire STEM system within the United States education are made to fix that problem. Don't feed the problem. Be a member of your community, but be an active and valuable member of your community by not being the angry noob and not chasing the noob off or inciting the anger in the noob. We've all been there. We've all been in kindergarten. And in my case, I've gone from diddly to everything I'm at in sub 5 years. It's been a weird and bumpy road, and I hope that other people can follow that same road, but maybe with a few less bumps and a few less hammers. That's the end of my slides. But if anybody has a question, feedback, this is obviously the perfect time to do that. Okay. Those are fun ones. They are. But from my experience, and this is both in Windows and application programming and just users, okay? What you have to do is explain to them that it's not a simple question. Even if they want a simple answer, because I know that those are people out there, like, I just wanted to do this. I get that. You have to take the step and guide them very gently that what their answer is going to be, I can summarize it, but you need to know more and try and point them to those points of fact. And you know what? Those people are not going to be around long of their own volition because they have a perception and an observation of what they want, not what reality is. And it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with any things or not. It happens in every society with everything that you're doing. Look, I just want my car to do this. You can make it do that, right? Doesn't mean I can. It doesn't mean it's going to be simple. But you have to understand and try and get them to realize that their choice or assumption may be inaccurate. And it's not easy. Right. 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 Infighting. How do you deal with infighting when you notice somebody in your community doing the FUD or saying, just going right off on the elitist attitude? The only way that you can do that is attempt to be polite. Okay. If you know that this person only responds to snark, take it to a private channel, take it to a public, out of the public eye, long enough to tell the person, look, you're not being helpful. You can do this gently in public. I have users, and you've seen it in my channel personally. They come in and they're like, well, maybe you should go back to whatever. And my immediate response is, you're not helping and you're not answering the question. Please allow me to actually do that. I know some people are touchy about that. They don't like being told that they're misbehaving or they're not helping things. But I encourage you to explain over time. It doesn't always happen in a day. That this is not good for the benefit of the community. And if they're going to continue to do that, no one in the community will actually respect them. Because truthfully, if you're angry every day at your family or at the people at work and you're responding in short, snide comments, what are they going to do? They're going to get angry with you and eventually taper you out. Okay? Yes? Yes. Hmm? Right. And forgive me, the question was with a system D versus an anti-system D and the behaviors that are happening there. There are valid points on both sides of the discussion, and the same thing is with DNF versus YUM and changing an expected behavior in a program. When somebody changes a key component out or provides an alternative, it can induce both fanaticism because not necessarily all parts have actually read and looked into all of the details. I agree that there are definitely times when our expected behaviors change, and when that happens, it can be detrimental if they haven't been clearly noted that things have occurred. In the particular example case was DNF versus YUM, and with the new behavior with YUM, you could actually have your running kernel deleted, but oh, hey, we designed it that way, but you can use this flag, right? That's a perfectly valid point, and that's not necessarily Noob related, but what happens when the people on the outside of the discussion see this? They're seeing us having heated fanatic debates instead of having relatively reserved discussion, right? And I'm not saying that the discussion about systemd or about yum change or DNF flip over and things like that are completely inaccurate. I'm not saying that, nor that they're detrimental. What I'm saying is, if you take something somebody has said and they put it out there, and you read it and you don't actually check any of the facts, even in just the slightest detail to see whether it's right or not, then you don't have a place jumping in and saying, hey, I really think he's right and you're an idiot for thinking otherwise. Because somebody outside that community will see our discussions, because we as a community have open and public discussions on a regular basis. That can induce that kind of behavior from the people that are new. So that's how those discussions can be a problem. When they're not educated, that's a problem. The people that are having the educated discussion, they manage to have it, but you end up with the fanatics on either side. The fanatics are the problem, not the educated discussion. Okay? Yes? Those are the best ones. And unfortunately, those happen in public and private projects, and it doesn't really matter. The people that just want you to do their job for them, no matter what, those people can be a problem in any community. And your best chance, if you can't get them and guide them to actually be an active role in their own knowledge, then you need to very gently make them understand that you are literally not their support person, and that you will guide them, but you can't do their job. And if they want you to do their job, they can hire you. right? They need to understand that just because we're free and open source software does not mean we are free, right? We're contributing to a community and a cycle and an ecosystem. When we are not able to do it because we don't have any funds, because we're literally doing it for free, then the entire thing spirals back down out of control. And that person, although a user, they're not an interest user in any way, shape, or form. They're definitively a problematic user to the community's support, but they're barely a user of the software in any way. Unfortunately, there's also those people. And for the people on the stream that may not have heard him the first time, the people that come in and just demand to know how to do something or tell you, hey, just show me how to do it right now without filling out the fleshing details, especially if they come in and say you've got Apache with a vhost and they don't have either multiple IPs or the necessary routing and DNS configured, but they want to have a vhost with 5 subdomains and all this stuff, and they've never even touched an Apache configuration file or an htaccess. Those people are the ones that you just have to deal with the fact that they're not going to like you because you told them they can't have it for free. That's the entitled user. That's the petulant child behavior. And it doesn't matter if you're 10, 15, 30, 90, they exist. And it's really unfortunate. But we still have to be polite.
So, communities in general have a propensity for at least computing extreme. Communities are a propensity for being extreme. So, how do you handle the things the other way? The accusations of fanaticism against the government?
That one can be a fun one. When you have somebody that's saying, hey, you're being a fanatic about this, then you, as a person who is being accused of being a fanatic, you need to take your step back and do a very quick evaluation. Am I actually being a fanatic? Okay. Then you have to say, I'm not being a fanatic about this. This is an educated, I'm a little lively about it, but it is an educated discussion. And here's all of my backing points, and ask them why they're calling you a fanatic. They're saying you're a fanatic, then they need to back up why what you're saying is either ignorant or wrong. And that's how an actual debate occurs, how a discussion really occurs. What we have happen is that we have immature communication, and then things like fanaticism occur, and the literal bickering starts happening. You're not even on subject anymore, and people are starting to bicker about things. That is a problem, but the only way to do that is to properly bring debate points. And that comes down to communication and education. Right. And for the audience, we have a gentleman who has grad students, and they ask him about a Linux box. And the first thing he does is he shows them the app repos, and he shows them the man command and showing, hey, there's documentation right off the bat. And sometimes these people glaze over like, that was there the whole time? Because they didn't necessarily know to go look for those things, because they didn't know that they could expect those things. That's one of those times when you're a simple education of the community around you and popping their bubbles gently can really produce a lot of growth in that person, just because it will incite curiosity in them to explore. Yeah. No. Bird. Anyone else want anything? Yes. Right. We have a comment from one of the fellows in the audience who has a answer to the angry noob, the petulant child, the person who's decided that they can come after you because it's not behaving as they expect versus how it actually does. And I'll go ahead and have that chucked up on the notes, but I can't remember the entire URL, so my apologies. Anybody else? Any other feedback? Any other topic? Yes.
Part of our community is that we have open source. And I think what to do is to get used to that. The fact that we're willing to disagree, and sometimes we're very passionate about
Uh-huh.
it. Is wrong.
Okay.
It needs 2 more years at least.
Okay.
But anyway,
You're very right. Right. And you're completely right. Okay. The comment is that the people from the outside need to understand, they need to come to the realization that in our community we have open discussions. Sometimes they become heated. Right. And I'm not saying that discussion shouldn't happen and that they shouldn't be heated, because sometimes people are brick walls. What I'm saying is that you can't necessarily expect somebody not to take what you said out of context. So even in the heat of the moment, we say things, but try to make sure that when you're saying it, who you're saying it to and the context in which you're saying it is clear, right? Because we literally have the entire internet that is listening to us, and then some person at a reporting agency pulls out one stupid quote, and the next thing you know, we've got the entire internet in a uproar. He's a meanie. All right. In our groups, within our conversations, within the cultures that we have created, yes, those discussions happen. We're grown men, we're grown women. We are able to understand the difference between what someone is saying and what they're trying to convey, right? That comes down to part of the communication. You need to know how to actually step aside from the words being used versus what's being expressed, right? If they're using expletive language, they're probably really frustrated because the other person's not listening at all, right? But what they're saying, the merits of the technical points that is in the discussion, that's what needs to be paid attention to. And yes, the people that come into these communities have to understand that they need to do this, which is why I'm doing this. It covers both us in the communities and those outside the communities. You need to know. You need to know that people are observing you, and people that are doing the observing, you need to know stuff happens. Communication gaps occur. Sometimes people get into heated arguments. Anybody ever seen a bar? Mm-hmm. No, he doesn't get a pass. You're right. The gentleman in the back had made that the points that I'm making and the observations that we've had in the discussion here are applicable to any community, whether it's in what we do, whether it's in our communities or within our own corporate culture. There's no reason, as an example, that Linus should be the one that gets away with it. I'm not saying that he should, right? But people need to understand when he's saying this to his tight-knit group, but there's somebody out here listening in. That's the observational person. And we need to be aware that they're saying this. But you made a very valid point. Personal attacks are never a valid discussion topic, ever. Don't do that. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in church. It doesn't matter if you're at the dinner table. It doesn't matter if you're in the office. Personal attacks are off limits because it's going to degrade. And you know, as soon as you say it, it's going to degrade. You're going to ruin the entire conversation, and everybody now has to come back to it and rehash the whole thing after they've all calmed down. Very true. And this ties back right here. the gentleman said, if you're in the channel or if you're in the communication medium and you have the ability to respond and you do not say, hey, this is a problem in your behavior, then you're just as complicit because you're turning a blind eye to it.
This ties in with people lying, is that sometimes you're not insulting or attacking anybody, but that's what they're going to accuse you of. That's what they're going to storm off saying.
Yes. And he's exactly right. Sometimes, no matter what you do, the person thinks that you're being aggressive, that you're having an attitude with them, or you're dismissive. And sometimes that's just the person's personality because they're not getting what they want. And that's comes right back to the petulant child attitude. You're not doing what I asked you to. Well, trying here. And that's unfortunately part of our communication as a society, whether it's within FOSS or not. The other trick is people say things because they think they have some guard of anonymity. And in our community, people learn who you are, right? We have these meetings. You're on social media. People know and get to know you over the time that you spend in the community. You can't just say things and expect no ramification from it. And some people really do just do that. And some people really do just do this in person. Very accurate. Both backing up of what I've just said in regards to who and what people say, whether they do it in person versus behind a keyboard. And then there's the other fact that we're using a medium that can't convey facial expression, that can't convey the connotation of body language. And for that reason, you need to take everything you read with a little bit of a grain of salt, because they may not have intended to insult you, or they may have not have intended to dismiss you, or they may have actually tried to give you an answer, but they failed to put it into written word on what they're trying to express. That happens. Sometimes clarity can be an issue because of the mediums we use for communication.
As a parent, I think it's very interesting with children playing games. Child playing with a computer game, their interaction is very physical and nasty to the other player, the computer.
Mm-hmm.
But playing as a board game, you have to be civil or they won't play with you.
Exactly. When you have the example that I've given is that we have a child who's playing a video game, right? Sometimes they can get very animated. You get a Wii and it's flinging around like crazy, and they get upset or frustrated with themselves. It just starts getting flung around even harder, or the Xbox controller goes across the room because they're so frustrated with it. However, if you're playing a board game with a parent, a friend, you know that you've got somebody right there. They're going to be upset if you start getting petulant or angry at throwing a piece. They're going to be like, okay, well, this is over. And in our online media channels, outside of voice conversations, outside of a video chat, this is a problem because we, at this point, should know that there are context and connotation that cannot come through text alone. But it's a perfect example with the children. They know the difference between this medium and this medium because there's actually another person, and they know that they don't want to be treated that way. When it comes to electronic media, the person may never seen this person, may not know their name, doesn't give a rat's. And it just blurts out at people.
Ever underestimate the value of a crush or sorry, a smelling emoticon at the end of the sentence, like when somebody says, "Hey, can I install so-and-so on your HV server we bought?" You say, "What's the matter? Your Dell rep didn't have to know."
Right. Right. There is a certain amount of snark, but you're very right. Extra connotation that you cannot put in text through a particular use of emoticon can be very helpful in people understanding that it's actually a joke. Hopefully they're not in an already bad mood because they may not read the emoticon. Over here. Right. We're not talking to bots. And that's exactly what you're right. The young lady in the crowd commend you for being at this conference on ad. Thank you. Just for your age to be here, I'm very happy to see you here. But because people don't associate a real person on the other end, they don't get any emotional attachment to their own behavior. When you disassociate the fact that you're actually interacting with a person, this isn't some chatbot on the other end. This is somebody who's either trying to work or trying to help you because they've done this before, right? You can't just blurt at someone, but you have to be able to accept that people may not have made that jump, that maturity in their own behavior to not do that. So that can be very hard as the receiver, or if you don't recognize that you're doing it. The education of the person, hey, there is actually someone on the other end, can actually be something that's really hard to do if these people never get out, they never attempt. And even sometimes people know that they're on camera and they say things, and it's just the dumbest thing you have ever heard. It happens. Unfortunately, we're all human. I don't know about you, but I can't walk on it. I tend to sink. Anybody else? Yes. The comment is that even when you're working in a global company, there's people that you may work with on a very regular basis, but you've never met in person, right? And then when you actually do meet in person, now you have a face to the name and the communication, right? Now you have somebody that you've had at least 5 minutes to have a conversation and get a judgment of. That's part of our natural behavior as a human. We're social animals. When you've never had that physical interaction, your brain literally does not have that piece in your behavioral setup, right? We're based on our observations. We're based on our interactions. If your interaction is only ever a screen or an email, maybe a phone, at least you've heard the voice. We're like, okay, well, the name's Janice, but he's from Germany. Oh, he's a he. Whoops. But if you meet this person face to face, right, that's totally different. Now you have a person you can put. Now you have an archetype that your mind can wrap around as a personality. And now you become far more personable. Which is why, for those people who may be listening in who've never attended a fest, if you really want to make sure that you have this through your head, attend a fest, attend a lug, attend any group that you've communicated exclusively through text media of some kind. Put any name to any face and realize that you may have said something once that was right on that line or a little above. Just even 5 minutes of that, and you'll begin to register that you have to consider that there is somebody living at the other end of that keyboard. And if you say something that pisses them off, you're not helping the community. Anybody else? No? Okay, well, thank you all for being a part of the discussion and listening. Nope, got one more in the back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, see, that careful. In this crowd, we know. Okay, and the comment from the back is that in our communities, we have documentation in multiple places. Some of it's not documented, and that's some things that we need to fix, as opposed to some groups or pieces of software projects where all of the documentation is entirely centralized, right? Now, The particular example was a proprietary OS. In that case, while you do have, note that I kept that civil, that note that you do indeed actually have one point in the end to ensure that all the documentation is in place, right? You may have thousands or tens of thousands of people that are actually committing and adding to the documentation or realizing that part of it's missing and then adding it and continuing that way. Even in those proprietary OSs, gaps occur, but they have people that explicitly take the time to ensure that those gaps get closed. And we as a group come back to the education. We need to make sure that those manuals are accurate. We need to make sure that they're updated. We do have lack in that. We don't have a cohesive single point. But due to the nature of our distributed behaviors, we can't have that. But what we do need to do is come to a consensus as a whole that we are going to make sure that it's easy to access and that the information is indeed available and not held in some accidental elitist knowledge. Okay?
One example I bring up often is, and I'm heavily involved in the project.
Mhm.
So, you want to talk about something people don't get. I don't really like desktop Windows versus desktop Linux comparison, but as I do, I bring up, do you think that it's undocumented, difficult, whatnot? Have you ever had an exchange server? Well, there is no central repository for exchange. You're still concerned for it through Microsoft knowledge base articles. You still have to search. You still have to find, you still have to make, educate guessing or to look for them. And that's no different than any other, like I said, any other open source project that you're not sitting in front of everything like the desktop OS.
Right. And the comment is that if, say, you have somebody who's trying to understand why something isn't clearly labeled when it comes to Windows versus a Linux desktop, or a Windows server versus Linux server, or a mail server on Postfix versus Exchange, there are still gaps in the communication. There's still user feedback that creates natural documentation. And what we need to do is take the effort to make that public and noted, that when it creates viable documentation, we fill that gap. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's going to take a very short amount of time. It's going to take time and effort because the discussions are going to evolve. And we're going to get better documentation because people are going to say, this isn't clear. This didn't work for me. Why did it not work for me? And make a note of the use case. Things like that happen even in proprietary projects. But we as a community tend to have it a little more often because we've come to the default that, hey, you should just go search for it. You should check the forums. You could go look for the wikis and see if anybody else has had this discussion. Whereas if you go to some of these other communities, they say, okay, I've seen this one before. I've had this discussion with someone. I'll go find it for you. I have had the experience where people don't always do that. They say, well, it's out there. Go find it. I know I've done it to people, and I've apologized to those people afterwards because I realized I could have just pointed them with a little bit of my time and effort. I'm not saying that I can give them an hour and a half to solve their problem, but it's something that I have to do personally. Did you want to squeeze one in real quick? Privatized catharsis versus publicized empathy. Oh, and. Right. And the comment here was that is definitely something there. Go to a communication medium to get an answer. Don't go to an event. That's entirely true, because then you're just feeding the problem all over again and just right into that cycle. Thank you. All right. Again, thanks everybody for coming and listening.
Your customers rely on your website or application. If it's slow or non-responsive, it infuriates your users and costs you money. Keeping your business-critical systems humming along requires insight into what they're doing. Your system metrics tell stories that can reveal performance bottlenecks, resource limitations, and other problems. But how do you keep an eye on all of your system's performance metrics in real time and record this data for later analysis? Enter Longview, the new way to see what's really going on under the hood. The Longview Dashboard lets you visualize the status of all your systems, providing you with a bird's-eye view of your entire fleet. You can sort by CPU, memory, swap, processes load, and network usage. Click a specific system to access its individual dashboard, then click and drag to zoom in on choke points and get more detail. Comprehensive network data, including inbound and outbound traffic, is available on the Network tab, and disk writes and free space on the Disks tab, while the Process Explorer displays usage statistics for individual processes. The System Info tab shows listening services, active connections, and available updates. Adding Longview to a system is easy. Just click the button, copy the one-line installation command, then run the command on your Linux system to complete the process. The agent will begin collecting data and sending it to Longview. Then the graphs start rolling. Use Longview to gain visibility into your servers, so when your website or app heats up, it stays up.
Citrix Zen Server gives you everything you need to integrate, manage, and automate a virtual data center, all on an enterprise-class, cloud-proven virtual platform, and at a third of the cost of other solutions. But why even bother with virtualizing your server infrastructure in the first place? Well, let's say you have a traditional one server to one application architecture, but you're running out of resources and performance is suffering. Once you order new server hardware, you'll wait for delivery, configure it, install your business application, stage and test the server, and finally, add it to your production farm. If you've been through this process before, you know it can take weeks or even months. You also know it's a manually intensive process that will burden your team every time you outgrow your current setup. With a virtual server solution, you could accomplish all of that in less than half a day. Server virtualization software separates the OS and application from the underlying server hardware. And with multiple virtual machines on a single server, you can use each of them to run different OSs and applications. This makes it possible to move your virtual machines from one piece of hardware to another whenever you want, to maximize utilization, simplify maintenance, or recover from a hardware failure, and without slowing down your applications or users. Clearly, server virtualization provides big benefits, and Citrix Zen Server provides even more. Since it's built on an open platform, Zen Server plays well with your existing hardware, storage systems, and IT management software, as well as with the industry's leading cloud service providers. Best of all, you can get started by downloading a fully functional, production-ready version of Zen Server for free. After a 10-minute installation process, you'll see how easy it is to start virtualizing your workloads and automating your IT management processes. And when you're ready for a richer set of management tools, just upgrade to one of the premium editions of Zen Server. So whether you're interested in virtualizing servers for the first time, expanding your server virtualization footprint, or moving server workloads to the cloud, download and install Zen Server today and see how it can help you simplify your IT environment. Citrix Zen Server. Do more. Don't spend more.